So welcome. There we go. Now we're live and we're recording. So welcome to Build Better with MaxWell Devonshire Realty. I am your host, Michael Leoppky with Live Better Realty, powered by MaxWell Devonshire Realty. So thank you everyone for joining us today, or whichever day it is that you happen to be viewing or listening to this. Today we are going to be jumping into a lot of the really fun stuff and some of the complicated stuff. We've talked about in previous episodes builder financing and the differences between the financing a new build versus financing a home that you're purchasing on the resale market. We've had another guest on to speak to the buyer perspective, who'd gone through several different types of builds, lots of illuminating points through that one. And today, our special guest, I'm really excited about today, is a good friend and longtime colleague, Chris Andre with Homes by Avi. Chris is a manager at Homes by Avi. He's been in the industry for on and off about 20 years, and that's covered a wide range. He's done construction, he's done customer service and warranty, he's done sales for the bulk of that for a variety of different builders over the years. The bulk of that time has been spent with Homes by Avi, and you are an area manager currently in Homes by Avi based out of Greaspaw, correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, and not to leave out the personal, Chris is born and raised in Edmonton. He's lived here, I believe, pretty much all of his life,
Yep.
and has a beautiful wife and a lovely child, and another one on the way.
Yeah,
We're
we're about a month away.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Chris, for taking the time out of your day and your schedule. I know you guys are super busy professionally and personally, so we'll dive right in if that's okay with you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Awesome, thanks. So just to bring you up to speed, we've been doing several episodes. I don't know if you've caught any of the previous ones, but we've kind of gone through. Okay, I'm looking to do a new build potentially. I've got my financing in order. I've figured that out. I've gotten some tips and advice and guidance from friends and family who have maybe been down that road before and have given me a few things to look out for. Now I'm ready to get out there and build my new home. I guess first off, where do I start? What ideally, with all the years of your experience, where should I, as a client or even as an agent, be starting with my client? Am I looking for? Do I want to find the best builder? Do I want to find the right floor plan? Do I want to find the right lot, the community? What should I be? What should I be starting out with?
That is an interesting question. I think the big thing is really getting to understand what the most important thing is in terms of the client's needs, or if you're buying for yourself, your own needs. Is it the community? Is community where you, like we say, location? That's that's it, right?
Yep.
So I think a lot of people's first instinct might be to settle on community, but do we care about the builder and the reputation that builder has, the reputation for quality, the reputation for timeliness, as an agent, the reputation in how they deal with agents? Are these important factors for you and for your clients? And finally, floor plan. Not every floor plan can be built in every community. So if that's the most important thing, then we should pick the floor plan first. Community is going to have to be secondary. And so I think it's a conversation that needs to be had with all the parties, all the stakeholders, and make sure that whatever the most important thing of those three things is where we focus. Now, me personally, I tend to lean towards community. I think that where you live dictates so much of your happiness in life. You know, your commute, your how close you are to friends and family, all that sort of thing. And I'm of the mind that most of the time you can find a floor plan with a builder that you're happy with in just about any community. So for me, it's community, but that's not going to be the case for every single person.
Okay, so it depends.
Yeah, it depends.
It depends. But you brought up some good points that I think are really useful. If so, builders, and we'll stick mainly to the topic of production style builders, just because that's your main area of expertise, and I think that's the bulk of new home building, anyways. And we'll dive into infill and custom and stuff in later episodes. So for those of you out there that are looking for that meat, it's coming. But you did touch on not every builder can build all of their floor plans in every single community that they're in. So if I'm a floor plan guy, if I'm like really like heavily, my reason for building is because I want a very specific floor plan. I may want to start there, determine who has the best floor plan for me, and then go from there. But you also touched on builder and understanding who's going to be a good fit and how, and who aligns best, I guess, with both my needs, but my values as well. And you mentioned if there's an agent involved, who works well with agents and who doesn't. And I'm going to ask you a little bit more about that later. So it really is a matter of taking that time up front to sort of go through some of those questions and help determine what direction to go. Fair to say?
Absolutely.
Now, I guess in order for somebody like you to help out with that, we'd have to come into your show home and sit down with you and have those discussions and walk through some of those insights as to what's most important.
Yeah. And I think that there's going to be a lot of legwork up front, doing the research on those topics, community, builder, floor plan, because really the best way to get the information is to walk into the show home, or at the very least make a phone call to the show home. The websites for builders are hit and miss, we'll say, with the quality of information that's out there. And so you're gonna want to talk to someone.
As far as the quality, are we talking the amount of information or the accuracy of the information?
Both.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I've seen some websites from builders that seem like they don't want you to know anything at all. I've also seen some, and I know even Avi's own website, it's not updated maybe to the minute and to the second. So, something goes for a pending deal on a quick possession, that's not going to hit our website immediately. Right. Okay. So if someone gets their hopes up that they're going to buy that home, and focuses so much on that one thing, and then they find out a week later, they call the salesperson, that one's been pending, it doesn't feel that great. So it is good to kind of start with a human, I shouldn't say start with a human contact, but that should be the next step after preliminarily kind of researching and looking at builders.
Okay. Now, okay, so I walk into, I've looked at some of the websites. I've got a sense. Maybe I have an agent working with me and helping me out on some stuff too. Now it's time we want to get out there. We want to actually walk through some houses. I drive up to a community. I walk up to a show home parade. Who's who? Who am I going to be? Who am I going to be dealing with? Can you just give us a real quick rundown as far as some of the people, some of the entities that I'm going to be dealing with, either directly or indirectly, throughout this process?
Yeah, and this will vary between builders, but for the most part, there's going to be an area sales manager that you're talking to, unless it happens to be their day off, in which case an associate or a host or hostess might be there covering. And it is good to clarify when you're talking to that person who they are and what their role is, because the area sales manager is the primary contact, the person that you're going to be dealing the most with. And so you want to make sure that you're not assuming that the person sitting there is the area sales manager, just to avoid any confusion. And then indirectly, it's going to depend on the structure of the company and the size and everything, but there's sales managers that work above the area sales managers that manage the sales for the entire company. And those tend to be the people who are going to be responsible for things like negotiations or on price or terms and that sort of thing. You've got, of course, estimating staff who are doing pricing. You've got design staff who are drawing the plans. You've got, in some cases, interior design specialists who are going to help customers. And if you are with a builder who offers that service, you will be spending a fair amount of time with those people too. There's site superintendents, site staff. And again, depending on the builder, those people may or may not be accessible. Most builders have at least one contact point with the site super, but many don't have any contact. And I guess in some cases, if the builder is fairly small, and we're not really talking about the smaller builders today, you may be dealing directly with an owner.
Right.
You don't really know in those cases. I know in some of the smaller custom builders, the owner does sit in the show home from time to time, and you might deal directly with them. So, but for the most part, on a production builder, you're going to be talking to an area sales manager
As your primary point of contact.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And now there's another entity that I wanted to touch on really quickly as well, and that's the developer.
Yes.
And I think especially I've noticed this since becoming an agent, that a lot of people sort of conflate developer with builder as sort of the same entity. And indeed, sometimes that's the case, although they're still separate, right?
Yes.
So who's the developer? Who is
in our world, when we say developer, we tend to mean the person who's responsible for servicing and selling the land. And so the individual lots typically are planned out. The style and structure of the community is planned out by a developer. Things like architectural controls are created by the developer in consultation with an architectural consultant. And so anytime we're talking about those types of things, land size, land pricing, architectural controls, none of that is in the builder's hands for the most part. So if we want to talk about changes to any of those things, the builder cannot help you in that regard.
right? Okay, and usually those things are fairly set in stone well ahead of the builders even being involved.
Yes.
Okay.
I've had people tell me that they were successful in negotiating land prices with the developers. I've never worked for a developer that would allow that.
I've never seen it, but yeah. If somebody told you, it must be true, right?
It must be true. I saw it on the internet. It must be true.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, on a angry Facebook rant. Okay, so those are the sort of the players involved, and I do think that's an important distinction for people to understand, that there is the developer that's sort of, they've done the long-term planning. They've actually developed the community and set it up that way, and they're the ones that are setting the land pricing. They're the ones that are setting those architectural guidelines that you mentioned, and we'll hopefully touch on that a little bit later on today. I am going to say, with doing half-hour episodes, there's a good chance that Chris and I are not going to get through everything we want to or even need to get through today in one episode. So just depending on how this goes, we may see Chris return again as a guest on another day to follow up, or we may actually have another builder representative join us and pick up where we left off today. So don't panic if there's some questions unanswered. Next question, and we've touched on having a realtor. Do I need a realtor?
Well, you don't need a realtor when you're dealing with a builder. And in some cases, obviously from my perspective, having fewer people involved simplifies the equation. And so if someone walks into my show home and they don't have an agent and they ask me, do I need one? I will tell them they don't. But I do also say to them, if you want someone who is going to be helping you and looking out for your best interests, you may want that peace of mind. I think people get the sense that I am a transparent and forthcoming salesperson. I am trying to act in their best interest, but I do work for the builder. I don't work for the customer. And I think that it's going to be up to each individual if they want another voice in there. One thing that sometimes can happen is that people assume if they use an agent, that the agent can negotiate better than they can, or they're going to catch something that they won't. the thing with builders is negotiation isn't really something that acts in the same way as it does in a resale scenario. The guidelines are pretty well defined, and it doesn't really matter who's on the other end of the negotiation from the buyer's perspective. We're going to handle the negotiation the same way. And it's good for an agent to know that too. And then I guess,
so as an agent, I'm not going to necessarily be able to negotiate a better price for my client than, say, the client just coming in and negotiating directly with you, because they're not really negotiating with you. They're negotiating, as you mentioned earlier, with the sales manager through you.
Yes.
Okay.
And the other thing is, from a purchaser perspective, I get this question all the time. If I don't have an agent, do I get a better price? And that is something that is going to be up to an individual builder. Avi will never penalize a person for having an agent. They're going to pay the same price whether they have an agent or not. And even when it comes to negotiating, that's how we look at it. We don't want to damage our relationship with customers and agents by giving preferential treatment to people who are in one basket and people who are in another basket. But I can't say that's the case for every single builder.
Okay. So good to sort of have an understanding of that. So you don't need an agent, obviously, but you can have an agent. And from what I'm hearing, if you have an agent who's going to be there with you, sort of guiding you through these stages and asking a lot of these questions and aware of it, say like an agent who's familiar with building and builders and has that ongoing relationship, that's really a kind of the ideal. From what it sounds like, is you're working in a collaborative role, but you have an agent that's there to protect your own best interests, you, as I'm saying, as the client, and to ask maybe some of those questions through their own experience that I might not think of as a buyer.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that is my favorite interaction with an agent, when the agent is supporting the client, asking questions that the client may not have thought of. But it does help, of course, if the agent is experienced in dealing with builders, because communication, we all know, can be challenging. And sometimes there's assumptions made on either side about what an agent knows and what a salesperson knows, or how a builder does things. And so sometimes it can actually be, it's rare, but sometimes it can be harmful if an agent has experience with builders, if it's only a specific builder that they have an experience with. And then there's assumptions being made about what can and can't be done, and the communication may not be clear. So when we do have an agent involved, that communication key is absolutely crucial. We need to make sure that we're well aware of all the limitations on what can be done with a specific builder, and those types of things.
Okay, that's all really good points, and I imagine it works likewise in the opposite direction, right? If a builder's had certain experiences with one or two agents that maybe were negative, it doesn't mean that that's going to be a negative experience across the board with all agents.
Yes.
And that's really good to note as well. Now I'm going to ask another question, a follow up to this one, just since you sort of touched on sometimes the friction that's there. And I get asked this a lot from my fellow agents. And so I'm going to ask you and put you on the spot. Why do so many builders seem so hostile to agents?
I think it's because we have to pay you. I mean, from a very basic level, if we're talking about money as a motivator, yeah, I mean, a builder is for the most part compensating an agent when they may not feel the agent is adding a lot of value. And so it can be really difficult if we perceive, whether it's the salesperson or the organization as a whole, that an agent is getting paid a sum of money and they've brought nothing to the table, or even thrown just hurdles that feel like we're doing all this extra work so that we can just close a deal that probably would have been closed without the agent there. At least that's what it feels like at times. Okay. But
wouldn't be surprised if that's the case in some cases. I've heard stories, I've experienced myself when I sat in a showroom, agents that would drop a client off and disappear.
Yeah.
And at that point, they really can't be protecting their client's best interests, as we mentioned earlier, as being kind of one of the main reasons for them being there. So important for agents out there, be involved early on from the start, be with your clients and be working in their best interest throughout the process. and ideally on a friendly professional basis with the builder and the builder reps. So
Well, and that is a good point. Sometimes I get the sense, and I don't know if I'm overly sensitive, but I'll have an agent walk in and it does feel like there's this combativeness right away. And I'm like, I don't know why you're coming at me like this. Like, we're on the
okay,
same side. We want to find a home for your client.
gotcha.
And so, that can start the relationship off in a strange way. And so I think, let's just recognize that we're all here for the same purpose, which is to help the client.
Gotcha. Thank you. So moving forward, I'm there. I've found the community. I've found you. We've had some good conversation, understanding kind of those needs and wants and direction. I'm ready to go tour a show home or 2 or 10. What, from your experience, Chris, what are some of the items or some of the things as I tour a show home? What do I need to be aware of?
Well, I guess first and foremost, if community is important, I guess going back to that first question, whatever's the most important, we want to make sure when we're in the show home that we're going to meet that need. So if we're in that show home because of the community, okay, what floor plans now can we build? Let's find out. Is the show home I'm looking at something that can be built anywhere else if I don't want to be in that community? And then once we get into those details, the next question should always be not necessarily what does the show home cost. I don't like that question because we don't need to worry too much about that at this point. But what we do need to know is if the show home's heavily upgraded or not. Am I looking at something that's actually representative of what the average person buys? Or did we put $300,000 in upgrades just to wow people, but no one ever buys that home?
Gotcha.
That's really important, I think, for setting buyer expectations. If you go through and you fall in love with the house and the salesperson has told you, yeah, this model starts at 600,000, and then you didn't ask, and then you find out that one's actually 800,000. Well, that really feels bad when you get into the nitty gritty of the pricing details a little bit later down the road. So I think that's a good question to ask is, like I said, it doesn't have to be exactly what the price is, but like, what am I seeing here in terms of upgrades? Are there standards in here? Help me understand what I'm getting when I'm walking through this house.
So almost worthwhile to walk through at some point, whether it's that initial tour or maybe even right after, but to walk through with you to get a sense and have you explain, like, this is included, that's included, this over here is an option that's going to cost you beyond the those build prices that we've talked about or that were maybe even on the website.
Yeah.
Okay.
What else? I guess one thing that I think is important on a personal level, if we're trying to judge the quality of a builder, because every salesperson is going to tell you they're the best builder out there. So
really,
how do we judge?
How does that work?
One of the things that I'm always proud of at Homes by Abbey is the care we take with our mechanical rooms. You can tell when you walk down to our basements, everything's clean, everything's done nicely. It shows a level of care that we ask our trades to take when they're completing the work for us. And I got to tell you, I've seen builders that just don't measure up. And I'm not saying that's the only way to judge the quality, but if they don't care about their mechanical room, what else don't they care about? So it's kind of a little way that you can go down and just peek on things and get a sense. It's not perfect. Show homes can be rushed at times. And, there's a million reasons why you can't just judge it on the mechanical room, but it's a good start and it can help you understand a little bit of where the builder's at.
Gotcha. Yeah, a peek inside the bones, as they say, right? Like you really, that's your best chance to get a glimpse as to the construction quality and how they put it together. Okay, so I've gone through. I like a particular floor plan. I like you. I like the community that I'm in. We haven't touched on cross-selling, but that's really a whole other thing and maybe important to ask when you first are looking at builders and understanding, can you cross-sell, can you not? Am I going to be dealing with you or am I going to be dealing with somebody else? Because I know that varies from builder to builder. But so I've landed. I've figured out which plan I want. But maybe I don't. Maybe I like that plan, but I don't like all of that plan. I want to make some changes.
So
Can I make some
first
changes,
question is,
Chris?
what changes? What do you mean by changes? That's going to be an important question, because some people, when they say changes, they just want to change colors. Great. Most builders will let you change colors. Some only operate off color boards, but many now have selection centers where you can pick pretty much anything that you want. So if it's something like that, that's usually very easy. Now, if you want to customize the floor plan itself, every builder is going to be different. Homes by Avi does allow some customization, but we're not full custom. We're not going to tear apart a plan and rebuild it for you.
Right.
So that's a question that needs to be asked, and I'm glad you asked it. Is can I do this? A lot of production style builders won't allow any changes. In fact, Avi's the first builder I've worked for that would allow any changes to floor plan. 3 previous builders that I worked for, we lost clients because we wouldn't make a change to a floor plan. So that if it's that important, we need to know that.
So maybe goes back to the beginning question that I said about what's important to you, identifying that. Are you the type, do you think you're going to need that? And do you want to maybe explore before even leaving the house, which builders are sort of change friendly and which ones are very, very rigid in the plan is the plan and that's it. Okay, great.
Now, oftentimes builders will have model options too that they may not show as well. So that's something that could be explored too.
Now, if I'm gonna make some changes, and I know we got a warning here, a 3-minute
Yes.
warning, so we're gonna have to wrap it up pretty quick here. We've already covered a lot of ground, but as I mentioned earlier, there's a lot more to cover. But if I wanted to make some changes, and we were gonna go, you said like that is an option within reason. There's going to be limits, of course. Do I have to pay any kind of a deposit up front to get a quote on those changes, to get approval on those, or is that something that's just part of the process?
Again, can't speak to every builder because I know it does vary between builders, but at a place like Avi, typically before we start getting into custom quotes, we want to at least see a lot on hold. And that just gives the company some sort of assurance that this person is serious in some way.
How do I do that? I want to put a lot on hold. How do I put a lot on hold?
So again, it probably will vary between builders and communities because the developer has their own lot hold process. If it's a pooled lot, which the developer would still own, if it's a builder inventory lot, then the builder may have their own process. So you want to clarify that with each individual builder. Place like Avi and many places I've worked, we take $1,000 deposit that is fully refundable, and that will hold the lot for a certain period of time. In Griesbach, I'm allowed to hold a lot for 30 days. In some other communities, you might only be able to hold a lot for a week or 2 weeks.
Cool. I'm gonna, like I said, we've gotten, I think, maybe halfway through everything that I wanted to cover off. So if you're open to it, Chris, I'd love to have you back for another episode and go a little bit deeper. But I'm going to ask you one last question, and I think it's important for people to have a key, one or two key takeaways here. But it comes down now, time to write an agreement. We want to write a contract where I've gotten my pricing back. I like everything. And we'll leave negotiation out of this conversation just because obviously that's going to be case by case. But we're sitting down to write a contract. What are some of the key points that myself as a buyer or myself as a buyer agent that I want to be aware of when I'm sitting down to do a builder contract?
First of all, it's going to be a lot more paperwork than you expect.
How much more?
Well, my typical contracts, you were covering the actual contract itself, we're covering specifications, and we're covering floor plans. Now, in Avi's world, that ends up being 20 plus pages of paperwork, if not more, depending on exactly what we're doing. And so the time consideration is important. How much time is this going to take me? And so
how much time will it take me on average?
I tell people to budget at least 2 hours and to eat before they come.
I was going to say, bring a snack.
Bring a snack. The other thing to know is that for the most part, builders don't change terms in their contract. I've not worked for a builder that will change terms in contracts. So if the buyer has an objection to anything in the contract, sorry, I guess you have to get over your objection.
Well, I think that points out something really important that I think a lot of people miss is getting legal consultation. You can take that contract and have your own lawyer review it, and not necessarily, like you said, to negotiate the terms, but to at least make sure that you understand what that term means, how it applies, when it would apply if necessary. And I think that can go a long way. And that's part of having an agent with you too, who understands some of those things to be able to explain it, or at least put you in touch with somebody who can, right?
Absolutely.
Okay. Anything else that I want to know? So it's going to be a lot longer than typical. The language is going to be a little bit different. The builders don't change their terms, and they don't. I've never seen it either. Of course, you could always ask, I guess. But is there anything else that you would say is important going into that sit down to write up an agreement?
I guess just be prepared, be thorough, read everything that you're signing, ask questions. That's really important. Nothing is more frustrating for me than seeing a person just start signing and not asking any questions. I mean, yes, it saves time. And if I'm hungry, that might be nice, but I know that those questions are going to come up later. And if they come up too late, it could be a problem. So
Okay.
ask questions.
Ask questions. Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate your time. This has been hugely informative just in the short time we've had today. We'll definitely touch base afterwards and talk a little bit more about, finishing this off, going through a little bit more stuff, getting to the actual build process. But I do appreciate everything. It's been very insightful.
Well, you're welcome. And thank you for having me. And thank you to MaxWell Devonshire and all the agents and Alex for having me.
Thank you so much. All right. Well, that's been another episode of Build Better with MaxWell Devonshire Realty. I'm, of course, your host, Michael Leoppky with Live Better Realty. This was Chris Andre, our special guest today, area sales manager for Homes by Avi. If you have any questions beyond what we covered today, feel free to reach out and let me know. We will be doing a follow-up episode, so we'll be able to cover off more, but by all means, reach out to myself. I can put you directly in contact with Chris if necessary. Or with somebody else who you're looking for that might be a better fit if that's how we determine it. So let us know and join us at the end of April for our next episode.